Welcome to the Tack and Pulse podcast, your place for sci-fi, news, rumour and debate. Is Hollywood paralysed? And, in particular, new sci-fi shows. J. Michael Straczynski, the creator of Babylon 5, says this is why we're not getting the remake of Babylon 5 that he hoped for. But is he right? Let's get stuck into it.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.
So very early on in the development process of the new remake of Babylon 5, I actually exclusively told you, much to JMS's irritation, that actually the show wasn't going to get picked up. That Amazon were the most interested, and they were going to put it on Freevee, but then Freevee got deleted. As they put adverts on Amazon, nobody kicked off, so they just realised, well, we don't need Freevee then. So I told you that, guys, but J. Michael Straczynski recently over on Twitter was asked again, why hasn't Babylon 5 happened? And he said, it's because Hollywood is paralysed. Nothing's happening. Has he got a point? Well, you guys will know, I've told you about loads of projects over the last 2 years that were being talked about at the studio level and were being pitched to studios and actually having a lot of interest. Space Above and Beyond is one good example that I know for a fact was pitched during the writer's strikes, and there was a lot of interest. They were even looking for sort of like a showrunner at one point, but that just hasn't happened. It's not been sort of cancelled, well, it was never really green-lit, so it can't be, but it's a show that they would still like to do at some point, but it's just on the gas, but not yet. Stargate is obviously a very big obvious one of this as well, that we know they were going to do a movie, even Deadline said it, but still nothing. There's a few other series as well that have taken forever to come to fruition. Look, we've still got God of War. They're only just about planning to go in production now, even though it was announced like 3 years ago. We've still got Warhammer. Again, no sign of it ever happening, but it was announced like 2 years ago. I told you guys about this Knight Rider series plan that was going to include the $6 billion man and Airwolf. Nothing happened for 2 years, and now finally we found out we're getting a Knight Rider movie. It really needs Street Hawk in it. It really does need Street Hawk in it. If they don't do Street Hawk, I don't know what's wrong with these people. But finally, after I told you guys about it over 2.5 years ago, it's finally happened. I, though, look at science fiction at the moment, and I'm concerned. There doesn't seem to be an awful lot of it being made. Apple are still doing Foundation and a couple of other shows. They actually did that brilliant Murderbot series, which is one of my favourite sci-fi shows of recent history. Resident Alien just got cancelled, which was brilliant. We have had Alien Earth, but that's more of a horror. I don't really like horrors. The insects are freaking me out in that series, and I almost don't want to watch it because I'm such a coward. But yeah, horrors don't do it for me. If a horror actually does what it's supposed to do and scares me, I don't want to be scared. But if it doesn't, what's the fucking point of it? So yeah, not a big fan of that. But it is a brilliant series, it's beautifully put together, and it really does fit in with what we've seen before. They could actually take a leaf out of the book of Alien Earth over at Star Trek, who constantly try to reinvent Star Trek and don't let it fit in with previous iterations of Star Trek. They've said, look, we've got to modernise it. Alien Earth haven't. Alien Earth have 100% kept that technology the same it was back in the 80s when they made the original Alien film, and I don't know about you guys, but I think that's quite good. What I'm not seeing, though, is a lot of science fiction coming through. We have had things like Beacon 23 over on MGM, but to be honest, it wasn't very good. I really struggled to watch it. We've had the Ark on the Sci-Fi Network. I couldn't watch it. Now, back in the day, in the golden age of sci-fi, back in the day when we had Star Trek TNG, DS9, Voyager, but we also had the Sci-Fi Channel, which had, I've got a million different sci-fi shows on it. Not massive budgets, don't get me wrong, but entertaining, quite quirky sometimes sci-fi shows. That went. We then had Streaming Wars, which again we got to see quite a lot of science fiction or fantasy new shows. We got things like Stranger Things, which is a sci-fi show, and it's one of the biggest shows of the last 15 years. We want more of that, please. But right now, since the writers' strikes and since the massive contraction of Hollywood, I don't think we're seeing an awful lot of sci-fi. Don't get me wrong, it's not none. We're getting some. But a lot of the shows we're getting were actually greenlit or were in production before the writers' strike. You know, we're still getting Star Trek, but that was a contract that was signed and agreed well before the writers' strike. So, in lots of ways, Paramount haven't actually had a choice. And from what we're hearing, exclusively again, from Paramount insiders, is that these shows cost too much, and actually they'd quite like to do something else, or at very least do a Star Trek series on a bit more of a budget. So, when J. Michael Straczynski talks about Hollywood being paralysed following the strikes and the contraction, the end of the streaming wars, I think he's got a point. Now, we are living in a new world. Don't get me wrong, with streaming and things like that, people just don't go to the cinemas anymore, for example. And we're getting a lot of stories about, like, oh, Superman bombed or Fantastic Four bombed at the cinema. And not understanding, actually, that studios don't make their money from cinema anymore. If a movie breaks even at the cinema, or even just gets close to it, it's a success. Because it is on home cinema, people streaming it behind a paywall, that they'll make most of their money. And Superman recently broke a crap load of records for that when it went on those, pay-per-view streaming providers very recently. You pay £10 to get to watch it. That's where they make nearly 75% of their money now. So, these movies, massively profitable. They're still making streaming movies and things because they know they do well. And a lot of those movies are sci-fi. But why is that not moving into TV series? I think the reason for it is that they're massively expensive. They need to be cinematic quality. Look at the Rings of Power. That has cost Amazon a bloody fortune and really made them stop and think about lots of projects. And I honestly, hand on my heart, that it's one of the reasons why we haven't got Stargate or a few other shows from Amazon, because it really made them stop and think about all of their plans moving forwards and made them stop and go, we cannot do that again. It cost us too much money. And that is an Amazon who really, a bit like Apple, aren't that worried about losing money because they're trying to build a brand. But you can't lose that kind of money. We get series like The Expanse and Foundation, which, again, Apple makes, good quality, doesn't cost a fortune. But Apple seem to be the only ones doing it. No one else seems to be able to make a sci-fi episode of anything that costs less than 10 million quid an episode to make. That's just not doable in the long term. We could never get back to getting 24, 25 episodes of something like that again because nobody's got 250 million quid, other than Amazon and the Rings of Power, to spend on a TV series. It's just not practical. So yeah, Hollywood, particularly when it comes to sci-fi, paralysed. I think J. Michael Straczynski has got a point, even though I don't think it's the main reason why Babylon 5 never got made. But guys, get into the comments, tell me what you think. Is Hollywood paralysed, and are we getting less sci-fi, particularly less quality sci-fi than we ever did before? Get into the comments and tell me exactly what you think and why you think it's happening. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. It really helps us out and you'll never miss any of our new videos. Also, you become a member of the channel and get to see a lot of these videos before everybody else. You lucky bunnies. Go check that out. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.
Our tachyon pulse has been unable to completely penetrate the anomaly.